It's only been 2 months into the job, but what a wild ride it's been for Ruben Amorim. The 39-year-old ditched his Sporting Lisbon gig mid-season to take the reins at United, but things haven't exactly gone smoothly. With more losses than wins, Amorim is getting a crash course in just how tough the United job can be. So, what's behind the struggles? Did he get thrown into the deep end too soon? Or are the players just not up to par? Let's dive in and explore the issues together. But before we get started, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. After United's 3-1 loss to Brighton at Old Trafford, Ruben had some interesting reviews of his own team. If you missed it, here were his words in that press conference after the game. "We are the worst team maybe in the history of Manchester United. I know you, the media, want headlines, but I am saying that because we have to acknowledge that. And to change that, here you go, your headlines." Well, he got what he desired, because his assessment of his own team made headlines. I mean, it does feel kinda harsh to out your own team like that. But then it leaves you wondering, how bad has it been for his United? Well, here's the rundown. In his 15 matches as manager, he's won 6, lost 7 and drawn 2. And right now, as of game week 22, United is sitting in a shocking 13th place in the Premier League. Honestly, if he'd had any idea what he was walking into, maybe he would have stayed cozy at Sporting Lisbon until the season wrapped up. Since he signed for Man U, he has been breaking records, but not the kind you'd brag about. After a 2-0 loss to Wolves, he made history by becoming the United manager who hit 4 Premier League defeats in the fewest games. How many games, you ask? Just 7. For context, the previous holder of that unbelievable record was the man himself, Erik ten Hag. The Dutchman hit 4 defeats after 13 games, but it doesn't stop there. He also earned the title of the first United manager since Walter Krickemer in 1932 to lose 5 of his first 10 games in charge across all competitions. His start at United has been the worst of any manager since Sir Alex Ferguson. In terms of the Premier League, the defeat to Brighton marked his 11th league game. And here's where it gets interesting. He's only picked up 11 points in total. That's an average of just 1 point per game, which means he's only earned 33.3% of all possible points. To make matters worse, his record is 5 points worse than Louis van Gaal's, who was also struggling in his first few months at United. Van Gaal managed to collect 16 points from his first 33 available. On the flip side, Ole Gunnar, remember him? He's the only manager since Ferguson to break the 20-point mark in his first 11 games, with an impressive 29 points. And with abysmal records all around him, it's no surprise that Ruben stormed into the dressing room after the Brighton loss in a fit of rage and went on a rampage. Chairs, tables, and even a poor defenseless television paid the price as he vented his frustration in front of his squad. It was probably like the famous hairdryer treatment from back in the day in that dressing room. But honestly, after watching some of United's performances since he landed in England, the real surprise is that it took him this long to snap, or that it was just a TV that got smashed. For someone often described as cool and collected, this side of him came as a shock. But then again, before joining United, he barely had any reason to lose his temper. Before this chaotic chapter, his career had been a story of success and smooth sailing. Take his first job, for example. It was a short stint at Casapia, a team in Portugal's 3rd division. Things didn't start great. He lost his first 2 games. But then, he struck gold with his now famous 3-4-2-1 formation, and the team went on an unbeaten run. That streak set him on course for promotion, although Amorim would leave before the season ended. Sounds like he's the type of guy not to stick around too long. And just like that, he took charge at his former club, Braga, in 2019, where he once played. Being the genius that he is, the young manager wasted no time in hitting the ground running. He led the team to win the Taça da Liga, the Portuguese League Cup, and to put the icing on the cake, he coached them to their first away win at Benfica in 65 years. That's the kind of stuff that puts you on everyone's radar. So it wasn't long before Sporting CP came knocking. They were so determined to land him that they forked out what seemed like an outrageous €20 million buyout clause. But guess what? He delivered. In his first full season, he ended Sporting's 19-year title drought, winning the league and adding another Taça da Liga to his trophy cabinet by guiding his team to a 1-0 victory over his former club. The next season, 21-22, he finished 2nd in the league, but still managed to grab another Taça da Liga. Even in 22-23, after losing 3 key players, he kept Sporting competitive, finishing 4th. Then came the 23-24 season, and he hit another high, winning the title again and going unbeaten with some breathtaking football. That's when United came calling. last November. But there's the big question. Was it a wise decision to leave mid-season? He was cruising at Sporting, with another title on the horizon, and yet he chose to dive into the chaos at Old Trafford. Could it have been different if he'd waited until the end of the season? One fan on X puts it better, saying, Ruben really gave up the chance to pull off a record-breaking season in Portugal just to fight relegation in England. The grass isn't always greener. What do you think? Should he have stuck it out at Sporting a little longer? Or was it the right move at the wrong time? Talk to me into the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So, let's put Amorim's time at Sporting into perspective. Over 4 years and 8 months, he managed 231 games. And get this, he never lost more than 2 games in a row. Never. Compare that to his current record at United, 7 defeats in just 15 games. It's almost unthinkable for someone who was so consistent back in Portugal. Now, don't get me wrong, these are still ridiculously early days in his United tenure. It's way too soon to make any definitive calls about whether he'll succeed or fail. But let's be real, this is uncharted territory for him. As a coach, his players never faced failure on this scale before. But who's really to blame for the poor start? Ruben, the squad, or the decision makers upstairs? It's the million-dollar question every United fan is asking. Surprisingly, a lot of fans and ex-players have chosen to cut Ruben some slack, and honestly, it's not hard to see why when you take a closer look at some of the impressive moments sprinkled in amidst the chaos. For starters, his United side pulled off a stunning win against City in the Manchester derby. Then came that game at Anfield, where his team defied expectations. Everyone thought United were heading for a thrashing, but they clawed their way to a hard-fought 2-2 draw, and should have probably won it too. And if that wasn't enough, he went to the Emirates, kicked Arsenal out of the FA Cup despite being down to 10 men. Clearly, the man knows his stuff, and the fans are starting to see it too. Just hop onto Twitter and you'll see sportive tweets like this. The mentality is slowly changing under Ruben, and I absolutely love it. With 10 men, this team used to capitulate in minutes, and now they're fighting for nearly 70 minutes. Great progress, my manager. Performances are improving. Patience and transfer windows are needed. You can see the foundations forming under him, and there's a lot of promise. So, while the road may have been bumpy, there's a growing sense of belief that Ruben might just be the guy to steer United back on track if he's given the time and tools to succeed. And speaking of tools, let's ask the real question. Is this United squad even good enough? Before we dive into the nitty-gritty, make sure you hit that subscribe and like button if you haven't already. Done? Great. Now, let's dissect this United team. The United squad have been wasteful when it comes to getting the job done this season, so it's no surprise Ruben has not shied away from making bold decisions since taking the job. 2 of the squad's highest earners, Rashford and Casemiro, have been sidelined so far. Meanwhile, youngster Alejandro Garnacho, who has had a breakout season last year, is getting fewer opportunities and looks like he could be on his way out. Up front, the young striker duo of Joshua Zirkzee and Rasmus Højlund have struggled to find the back of the net consistently, and players like Diego Dalot and Lisandro Martinez seem like shadows of their former selves. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like this squad is outright terrible, especially considering how they've stepped up in big games this season. But here's where things get tricky. Amorim is sticking to his preferred 5-2-3 formation. On paper, it could work, especially with Diego and Masrao playing as wide wing-backs. But let's not forget, this is a fundamental structural change for United, introduced mid-season, and it's been executed with players who weren't brought in to play this way. The result? A team that's not United's worst in history, player for player, but one that feels like a mismatch for the system it's been asked to play. Add that to their poor form at Old Trafford this season, and you've got a side that's hard to pin down, sometimes brilliant, most times baffling. So, while this might be United's worst team since the Premier League began in the early 1990s, it's still not the worst in the club's entire history. That said, 6 home league defeats by this stage of the season, that's their worst record since 1893. You have to wonder if Ruben knows just how deep the issue runs and is trying to prepare fans for an even bigger decline with some subtle expectation management. But let's be honest, the fans aren't blind to the reality of the squad. Just take a look at some of these tweets floating around. I still can't believe that this United squad is the second most expensive in the world. Not only was Ten Hag tragic from a tactical perspective, but he's left Ruben with an embarrassingly bad squad, having spent £600 million. He's set the club back years. This is the reality. Amorim's inherited the worst United squad since the 1970s, and probably the club's weakest attacking options in living memory. United's squad today cost over £750 million, and probably about 3 or 4 of them are good enough. Genuinely, the worst squad building in football history. If you're a Manchester United fan, and you see Ruben as the problem and not Ineos, and these players, then you're definitely a part of the problem too, and I cannot take you seriously. Sounds like a lot of shots taken at the United squad, but if you watch games like the one against Newcastle in that 0-2 loss at Old Trafford, you'll understand the criticism. In midfield, you had 32-year-old Christian Eriksen and Casemiro, who lacked the energy to control the game. Up front, Xerxes struggled because he doesn't have the speed or skill needed to play as one of the wingers behind Rasmus Højlund. And Mazraoui, playing as a wing-back, seemed confused. The Moroccan didn't know when to attack or defend, and ended up doing neither. Watching that match, it's easy to see why Erik ten Hag ditched the possession-based football he used at Ajax, and instead focused on counter-attacking, using the speed of Marcus Rashford and Alejandro Garnacho. But here's the thing, Ruben's system doesn't rely on quick counters, and Rashford and Garnacho don't fit into his style of play. Right now, only a few players, like Diego Dalot, Amad Diallo and Harry Maguire seem to suit the way Amorim wants the team to play. That's a big problem. Amorim's system, with its 5-2-3 formation, needs players who are smart, technically strong, and know how to move into the right spaces. Unfortunately, most of his squad doesn't fit that description. So what next? For Amorim to succeed, he needs two things: money to buy players who fit his style, and time to make his system work. Right now, he has neither. United are walking a financial tightrope with their financial fair play limits, and co-owner Sir Jim Ratcliffe is cutting costs to every level. United's transfer business in recent years has been nothing short of a disaster. They've spent huge amounts of money with very little to show for it. Since Sir Alex Ferguson retired in 2013, the club has hired 5 permanent managers and spent nearly £1.5 billion on transfers, yet the results on the pitch haven't reflected that investment. Take Antony, for example, signed from Ajax for a big fee 2.5 years ago. He's now out on loan to Real Betis. For Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the club, the real challenge lies in offloading him permanently and recouping a reasonable fee. But let's face it, United will never get anything close to what they originally paid. It's almost certain they'll have to accept a significant loss. Ruben himself has admitted that United can only make new signings in January if they sell players first. But selling has proven difficult, leaving the manager stuck with a squad that doesn't match his vision. This has led fans and pundits to ask the obvious question: why can't Ruben adjust his approach to get better results in the short term? It's hard to see things improving if he stays rigidly committed to his philosophy while the team struggles to adapt. After the Newcastle defeat, he was asked why he didn't go for a more pragmatic approach to stop the losing streak. His answer was clear: if I change all the time, it's going to be even worse. But I understand they have a lot of difficulties because they've spent 2 years playing one way. You can feel it, I can feel it, but I have to sell my idea. I don't have another one. Selling his idea means Ruben Amorim is going to be shaking things up at United. And you can already see the big changes are definitely on the way. Antony's been sent out on loan, Rashford's stuck on the sidelines, and now there's talk of Garnacho heading to Stamford Bridge. A whole new United might be taking shape soon. So, there you have it, folks. Ruben Amorim's struggles at United laid bare for everyone to see. It's far from perfect, leaving us to wonder, how patient can the club and its supporters afford to be with him? With those losses piling in and no money available to bring in players that fit his style, you have to ask, is he putting his job security at risk by sticking to his philosophy? The coming months will be a massive test for the Portuguese coach. But for now, do you think this United squad is truly the worst ever? Or is it just a team in transition? And with the league becoming as competitive as ever, can Amorim pull off a miracle and turn the season around? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, while you're here, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button. It really helps the channel. Stick around too, because you won't want to miss our next video, packed with more exciting content just like this one. See you there.